Hi there, welcome back here on Prime Morning. It's time for us to get into good living this morning here on the show. Don't forget, you can be a part of it by sending your messages to our social media pages on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. If you're also on WhatsApp, of course, that's also another place where you can send your messages to us. It's very active this morning, so you can just join us over there and share your thought with us here on the topic that we're talking about today. Before we go into that, we're reminding you once again that we have our Valentine promotion still ongoing, so you want to be a part of it. Now, it's pretty simple. All you have to do is to make sure that you take a picture with your partner, and then you send it to us. It got to be very good. Just be creative about it, and then you send to us on our WhatsApp line, and guess what? Once you're done, we're going to post them. So when we post them on social media, make sure you talk to your friends to go there and like the page and comment. Now, the most liked pages or comments actually gets the opportunity to eventually become the winner or runner-ups who would also be given some packages. Now, we've got a dinner for two. We've got a weekend stay at a luxurious hotel here in Accra. And also, we have a spa treatment for you. So all of these and other many prices coming your way, and you want to be a part of this one. So please make sure you go out there and drop them. We've received a lot of them, and some have been, really creative about it. All right. So please go ahead and send yours to us right now if you haven't done that yet, and would actually get back to you. But once you're done, make sure that you make people go and comment. They like it and all of that, so that it increases your chances of becoming the winner eventually. All right. Let's make it happen. Now, this morning on Good Living, we're talking about some very important happenings that have been, occurring in this country. We want to talk about food poisoning. Now, this week we had a very sad news coming through because over 5 people, and still counting, have lost their lives. Over 40 are still struggling for their lives. And it's all about the desire to go and purchase the food you want to eat. What you feel like, eating, and it doesn't end up well. And sometimes we put the blames in so many other places. But today, we want to just get a bit of clarity on that and where exactly we can, label the entire, not necessarily faults, but, the people who are responsible for some of these things, will give us a bit of clarity on that so we get to know where we are headed to when it comes to that. Now, access to sufficient amount of safe and nutritious food is very key to sustaining life and promoting good health as well. It's important that unsafe food containing harmful bacteria, viruses, parasites, or chemical substances causes more than 200 diseases ranging from diarrhea to cancers. Now, it also actually creates a vicious cycle of disease and malnutrition, particularly affecting, in fact, young children, early and the sick as well. Now, good collaboration between governments and producers and consumers is always needed to help food safety and stranger food systems as well. Today on Good Living, like I said, we'll take a look at the regulation of food vendors and what goes into how to ensure food safety standards are upheld. And also, we're going to be looking at the health aspect of it. What food is contaminated? How does food get contaminated? Some of the places that we sell food, people say that wache is sold at the gutters is always the best wache. I don't know how much you've consumed yet and how how much you're putting your life at risk. But our doctor is in here to help us with that conversation as well. So that's basically what we're doing. Now, my guest in the studio to help me with this is Mrs. Maureen Latte. She's the Director of Food Registration and Applied Nutrition Directorate, and she's coming from the FDA. She's here with us this morning to get us into the conversation on that. Good morning, welcome. How are you doing?
Good morning, thank you. Fine, thank you.
Great. And also Dr. Josephine Awoche Kweku. I hope I got that right.
Yeah, what you
Great. Yes, she's a medical doctor, and she's also here with us this morning to help us understand better this whole issue of food poisoning and how we can deal with them when it comes up. I mean, looking at the stories that have gone around, you'd probably be thinking, I have seen, and I mean, the case study for this is basically going to be the recent situation that we found ourselves in OEB. If you look at, I have seen where the place is and all of that. It doesn't look like a place that would, have any gutter or whatever it is that would contaminate the food. Now, that even makes it more mysterious as to, from my point of view. But I'm sure from medical point of view, there are reasons that would account for this. But from my point of view, it's a bit some way for me to see a place as clean as that. I mean, from the roadside and everything, you don't really see anything that is more of like a problem. And then people just go and buy. Innocent people just go and buy in the morning, hoping that they're going to fill their belly, but rather ended up in the hospital and some losing their lives. Now, from the FDA point of view, what's the update on this, basically?
Yes, before I start, I have to correct the number of lives we lost. It's only one.
It's only one?
Yes.
Okay, so we read in the papers
one isn't
that
only.
5.
One isn't only. People shouldn't eat and lose their lives, but it is one.
Okay,
Only
so
one
there's a
isn't
contradiction
confirmed.
out there then, because the newspapers that we read this week, we had about 4, 5 numbers, but it's one.
Yes.
For the records.
Because in instances like this, Ghana Health Service is the lead agency, and we are working with them. We've collaborated with them from day one.
So they gave
And
you this record?
Yes, they have confirmed, because the hospitals are under them. So they've confirmed only one.
And then those who are still in the hospital, do we have the numbers?
For now, we don't have anyone still in the hospital.
Okay.
There were 53.
Okay.
52 are now at home, and then we unfortunately lost one life.
So those who are home are very okay now?
Largely, they should be okay. Usually with food poisoning cases, you may have it for a while.
Okay.
Yes, but they are all under medication, so I'm sure most of them are okay. We haven't gone to the various homes to visit them after they had been discharged, no.
Okay.
But they will be largely okay.
All right, thanks for the clarification on that. Appreciate it. Now, so, like I said, why did we get here?
What accounted for this particular incident? Okay. So yellow CCS, as we have gotten to know, is a joint where Wachi is sold. And they have 2 other joints, one at Sharp Curve and then another at Prison Joints.
Okay.
They are all along the
same stretch.
Yeah. And the same food was consumed at these 2 other joints. She usually prepares it at home, so from a central location, and then distributes to the 3 joints.
Okay.
But we picked the incidents only from the bush canteen. And through our investigations, we got to know that some of the stew was left overnight on Thursday evening, so overnight to Friday morning, and then it was mixed up with fresh stew and served. So that is where we are suspecting the food poisoning.
Okay, so it didn't affect the other places?
It didn't affect the other places.
Did they have any reason for that?
Yellow herself, she and one of her children were at bush canteen. They were all affected. They were all hospitalized. She has other children who man the other 2 joints. Those children consumed from the other 2 joints. They were not affected. All the 53 cases, consumed food from the bush canteen.
So, what inspection went into this? Because basically, it's supposed to be distributed to other places where they all sell. This mixing of the old and the new stew was done to distribute to the other places.
No, it was
done for only that place.
At the bush canteen joints.
Okay.
Because that was where there was a leftover on Thursday evening.
Okay.
Yes, there was a leftover, and then it was consumed on Friday. So the other 2 branches didn't have the leftover stews.
In this case, where do we put the blame? Who's held responsible from the FDA's point?
It is the caterer, because food shouldn't be left overnight at just room temperature. No, it will certainly go bad. So the food should have been stored well. The stew should have been stored well, and not just left overnight at room temperature, because it was just left at the vending site.
There was a loss of life. Others were also sick, had to be hospitalized and all of that. Are there punitive measures in this case?
Well, what we have just done is to close down the facility.
Okay.
We are helping her to be compliant. But punitive measures, we haven't thought of that for now.
But there's possibility of that?
Yes, there's possibility. Because our management has taken it up, so our board will get involved. So they will decide that.
Okay.
At our level, we have to ensure that we bring it up to speed and comply, so that we don't have a recurrence of this issue again.
Okay, we're going to get into moving forward some of the things that we're supposed to be doing, or what even the FDA states in terms of cases like this. But Doc, let's get into it. If we say food poisoning, I'm sure from my point of view, it's very broad. So many things can account for it. What does the medical terms look at when it comes to food poisoning?
Okay, so when we say this food poisoning, that means any disease or illness that has occurred because somebody consumed food or water that's contaminated. Okay, when we say contaminated, that means some either chemical or an infection. Okay, it's contaminated with those infections. The infection could be bacterial, it could be viral, it could be a parasite, it could be a chemical, it could be a toxin, several others. Okay, so usually, it boils down to that. If you eat or drink anything that is contaminated, you can get food poisoning. And this was an outbreak. So if we say outbreak, then that means it affected minimum 2 people from the same source of food or water.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's how we consider this case.
Yes, so it's an outbreak. So the same source of food has affected about 53 people. So that's an outbreak. Okay. So
the cause of it, from the explanation we've gotten right now, is it going to be considered as food poisoning, or there's a term given to a leftover food that has been mixed up with something else that has affected people negatively?
So we know that when food is left over, they get spoiled, right? And usually it is these infections, either some bacteria or virus that got in there, and then sometimes fungus, or can, cause the food to go bad. So they have ingested some form of bacteria or virus. So it is a poison. Even if it is a chemical, whatever it is, provided it has caused an illness and it is from food, you've been poisoned by food.
Yes. How long does it take for the reaction to kick in terms of if the person has taken the contaminated food already? Does it take too long? How do you know that something like this is happening to you?
So it depends on what caused it.
Okay.
So as I was saying earlier, we can have bacteria, we can have a virus, we can have a chemical. So based on exactly what causes, that is what will determine the onset of action. So even under the bacteria, like the bacterial sources, based on the exact type of bacteria, the time frame will change. So from some of them within hours. So there's one we call staph. When the food is contaminated with staph, within 30 minutes to 8 hours, it can set in.
Okay.
When it's like an E. coli, 3 to 4 days, it can set in.
Oh, it can take like 3 to 4 days and you still have that?
Okay, when you have salmonella, it also takes days. Some within 24 hours. When you have cholera, for instance, within 24 hours, it can set in. So it depends on exactly what caused it. That is what will determine the onset of action.
So in that case, what are some of the things that you would likely start feeling, or what are some of the things that happen in your system that makes you think that this is different from the normal sickness that you're experiencing?
So most of the time, they're usually similar, but then some of them have slight differences. It's even difficult to tell exactly which is which unless sometimes you culture the stool or you do some extra tests. But largely the management, they are a bit similar, so it makes it quite easy for us. Usually you may have some abdominal pain, some will vomit, diarrhea. Sometimes even from these 53 people, they might manifest differently. Some will have just diarrhea. Some may have just vomiting. Some will have diarrhea and vomiting. Some will have abdominal pain. So it depends. But then largely, diarrhea, vomiting, abdominal pain. Some may have fever. Some may have chills, headache, body pain, depending on exactly, the cause. And then the immune system of the person as well. Some people they have very strong immune systems, so they will manifest it, but it will just be mild, while somebody else will just go, to the very extreme.
Let's look at in terms of the risk involved. Some will lose their lives, others will still be able to. You're mentioning that the immune system can also help in making sure that even you don't get to experience it the way other persons will experience it. At what point does it get where you feel like this person, for example, the one that lost his life or her life, at what point does it get for you to know that this poison is eating so much into the person that the person has to die?
So it depends on how the person presents. Someone is just having abdominal pain and maybe some fever. That's okay. That's easy to handle. Than somebody who is vomiting and having diarrhea at the same time. Such a person is losing so much fluid. Okay? And then if maybe it's a child or a baby, their body volume is very little, so the amount of water they have is very little. If such a person is vomiting and having diarrhea, they will lose water and get dehydrated very easily. Okay, somebody may be having a bad diarrhea, but because the person is not vomiting, the person is able to drink to replenish. Okay, so it will be easier for such a person than somebody who is vomiting. Okay, so such a person will need IVs to help sustain. So it depends, and it depends on your immune level, how competent your immune system is. Because if you are immunocompromised, already your body is not that strong. Because there are some, maybe the three of us, you went to a joint, we ate. Maybe I'm more immunocompetent than maybe anti-Maureen. So with that, maybe I may just show some slight abdominal cramping. The infection is there, but my body is getting rid of it. Auntie-Maureen, on the other hand, may probably have some bad diarrhea. At this point in time, she's at risk of having complications than myself, because probably my immune system is kicking in harder than hers. Okay,
And
so
such
all
things
these
eventually leads to death.
Yes, it can, because when you lose so much water, you can enter into a hypovolemic and go into shock. So, and when you go into shock, all your organs can get affected. Your kidneys can get affected, and when you lose so much body fluid, there's some things we call electrolytes, like sodium, potassium, everything comes out of it. So then the body starts losing all those things. So if you don't replenish them for you, it also has very fatal consequences.
Wow.
Okay.
I see. Interesting. Now,
To add to that was what happened in the case of the man who unfortunately lost his life.
Okay, so it's a man that we lost.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Let me clarify. I heard it was the landlord that gave the.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. He's the landlord. He was the landlord of Yellow Sisi. Yes. So he also consumed the food like all of them. And he also started having the reactions. Yellow Sisi herself, as I mentioned, and her child and somebody who helps her were sent to the hospital. They were admitted. The landlord, on the other hand, was self-medicating. So that was what happened. Yes. He was self-medicating. It started on Friday. So I think it was till Sunday evening, dawn, before he was
So he didn't die on the
hospital.
spot of eating
No,
the
so
food.
he died basically on arrival at the hospital. Yes, so if he had sought medical help earlier, we could have still had him. Yeah, so it looks like he was dehydrated, as Doc said. Yes, so.
When it comes to the regulations, in cases like this, what is the first step? You mentioned that you close the place down and then investigation goes on, all of that. But I mean, analyzing the situation, where does FDA now decide that you're going to come back to operate again, or you're not operating again in the next 15 days or 10 days or 2 years, where we're not making you sell this food again? What goes into it in regulating some of these things?
Yes, so in this case, we closed down the place on that same day, and then we followed up with a letter signed by the CEO. And we gave them up to the 7th of February. We gave them a tall list of non-compliances to address. So they have up to the 7th of February. But today we are even going there. We called them yesterday. They said they had started addressing them. So today we are going to check.
So what's
where
the
they have gotten
not to catch you? What's the detail of the non-compliance?
It just had to do with poor food handling practices.
Okay.
Because for somebody to leave food overnight and not store it under the appropriate temperatures, then you know that the level of education of the person when it comes to food safety is very low. Yes. And we have licensed some of these joints, but unfortunately hers hasn't been licensed.
Really?
Of course, everybody wasn't even aware of the existence of such. We have a lot of street food vending sites scattered everywhere. Yes, so we work hand in hand with the environmental health, because they are on the ground. Every day we are not many, we can't be everywhere, but they are on the ground. So we collaborate with the environmental health officers under the MMDAs to regulate that sector.
But how come she hasn't been able to do the registration? Or is it the fault of the FDA? Or it's because she never made an attempt? And who is supposed to make the attempt? Is the FDA supposed to go on the ground? Or you have to start a business and say, FDA, I've brought myself. I'm starting this business, so I need you guys to register.
So ideally, if you go into an industry like that, you know you have to be regulated. if you are selling maybe clothes somewhere, maybe there isn't anybody who may come and regulate you. But once you are into food, you know you have to be regulated. So you would have to approach the authorities in charge and then make your intentions known to them. Then they will come and inspect your facility and then help you to comply. But FDA too doesn't just sit in the office. We also go around. But like I said, we may not be able to reach everybody at the same time. Yeah, this year we had a number of national service guys coming on board to help. We picked about 400 and something, about 100 and something are just in the food division alone, so that they help us with this street vended food issue, because we started this project in 2018 with FAO. It was a pilot. So when it ended, FDA incorporated it into our daily activities. So from November 2021, we started licensing the street food vendors. Yes, so we also go out there, reach out to them, and then push them. So we are human beings. Usually, when we are not pushed, we sit in our corner and we do our own thing.
Yeah.
Yes. So we also go around. We have market surveillance teams who are always on the ground, trying to help to push them to come.
Well, one of the most difficult things I'm sure a lot of people still, even till today, are not able to identify is the fact that what shows this person is registered. How do I buy from a person that maybe is registered or not? What are some of the things that we need to know about that?
So for those who have been licensed or registered, they are given a permit, a small paper. So they are supposed to display it.
Okay.
It wouldn't be under their base and you would go and ask for it. They are supposed to display. So for those we have given, we have ensured that they have displayed so that you will not even go and ask for it. Once you get there, if they have sieve or net, you see it in it.
A place like Yellow Cici's place, I don't know where she's going to display it. Either inside or on the outside, because this is a small
there's this
small
cage, yes.
that she's put over there.
And there's the glass. There's glass.
Yeah.
So they
So you put on the glass.
display inside. So anyone, the clients or customers will see it. Yeah.
Okay, but then it doesn't still end there. Somebody can still have the registration, the permits, and everything, and still not be doing the right thing.
Yes.
So, in terms of regulation-wise, do we have times that we go and see some of these things? You know, even in preparing the stew or the food itself, how do we become part of it? How does the FDA become part of it?
Yes. So you can issue somebody with a license today. You go there tomorrow, and it will be an entirely different story.
Yeah.
Yes, because when they want the permits, they become compliant, they will do all that you ask them to do. So we have visits, announced visits. You will know you have applied, so you know we are coming to do maybe the pre-license. Then after that visit, we'll do follow-ups to ensure that you have complied, and then we issue you with the permits. We also have unannounced visits. So that's when we just chance on you when you are not aware, because that is when we get to know the real you.
How often do we do this?
Oh, it depends on the facility. We have categorized all of them. We have the high-risk ones and the very low-risk ones. Those who are very compliant and those who are not. So those who are compliant, just once a while we visit them. Those who are not compliant, recalcitrants, we visit them very often. So we have those categories, and then we follow that.
So when you go, do you go with doctors that, and I'll come to Doc, do you go to doctors that test some of these things that ensure that, okay, this food that is selling here is bad or it's contaminated or whatever it is?
No, we don't go with doctors. They usually come in when there are issues like this, yes. But we pick samples at times and analyze. We have
that is if you suspect.
Yes, yeah. In this particular case, we had some of the food, but we had it the following week. So it has been compromised, but we still picked it anyway. Yes, we found it somewhere. We know in the heat of the whole thing, it was just left somewhere, and we picked it, yes. We have still sent it to the lab. But as Doc mentioned, we are suspecting ABME bacteria, and if you have food that has been left for those number of days, then you would have more bacteria in it, yes. So although we have sent it to the lab, we may not be able to get the results the way we would want, but we'll still get the results anyway and then look at it, yes. So when we are in doubt, we always pick samples and we analyze. We have a lab, we have Ghana Standards Authority, they are close by. They also have a lab. Food research is also close by. There are times we send samples there, and we do it in our lab, yes.
Okay. All right. So if you just joined us here on the show, this is Good Living here on Prime Morning, and we're having a conversation on food poisoning. If you're joining us now, you can send your messages to us on our WhatsApp line and let us know if you've been food poisoned before. Maybe you can share your story with us. Let us know what exactly happened and how you were able to come out of it. If you've seen or you have someone that has lost their lives through food poisoning, you can share it with us and maybe just tell us what exactly happened to the person. And if you have any question you want to ask Doc and also Mrs. Latte, who's from the FDA, you can ask them those questions as well. So that's basically what we're doing. We'll try as much as possible and see if a bit later we can, engage viewers out there a bit as well. But for now, this is what we're talking about here on the show. Doc, let's get to which foods are likely to be poisoned. Do we have certain foods that does not really get any infection? Maybe whatever make up the food is stronger than any bacteria, and so if somebody consume it, it wouldn't affect the person in any way?
So far as every food can go bad, that means that, every food is at risk of causing some form of poison. But some of them are more of the common culprits, like vegetables, for instance. So it doesn't go on fire. So you can't say you're going to use heat to probably kill all the viruses and bacteria. So then how they are handled from the beginning to the end can be a source of infection. The source of water you're going to use to wash it, because the water itself can be contaminated. So you think you are washing the veggies, but you are probably contaminating it. So how you handle it, when you prepare salad, it has to go directly into the fridge. And then, before you bring it out when you are ready. If you don't do it and you handle it unnecessarily with all the creams and then the dressings we use for it, they get compromised very easily. So it makes those ones very prone to causing a lot of infection. Pastries, sandwiches, once they come out of it, because they get baked and all that, the heat, it kills every bacteria or virus that you think is in there. But we leave it there for so long. They can be left on the shelf for so long. So sometimes you cannot even tell how many days or how long it's been left there exposed. Okay, so sometimes it gets compromised, and then how many people will pick cake and say they are warming it? No, you eat it usually cold. So if it's been left there for a very long time and it's been compromised, then you are at risk of, getting an infection from it. And we have some foods that are eaten either raw or undercooked. That's how they are eaten. So if you have a food that is eaten raw and undercooked, and then whichever is already infected, and you're unable to get rid of the infections, then you're going to get some form of food poisoning. So those ones are more common. You see, and then the other bit is contaminated water. In this day and age, we know that we still have areas where people do not have good sources of water.
Yeah.
Okay, so then if you are drinking water that is contaminated, or you are cooking with water that is contaminated, like what I said about the salad, then you are in trouble. So these are the common ones. Okay, but then aside that, like you don't store your food properly. So maybe you've cooked it well, but then
storage is a problem.
but the storage is a problem. Some people don't have fridges. They leave the food overnight. In the morning, they warm it. If you don't do it right, you don't store it right. Sometimes people leave the food, and then during the night, some organisms like cockroaches and mice and things can go around it and all those things. Some maybe you leave it. Lots of things can happen when you don't store your food properly. So when it happens that way, it makes you prone to infection. So all these things are things that, increase the chances of getting food poisoning. Okay.
Now let's look at when it gets bad. Okay. What are some of the? Let's just say you bought the food, you're in your house. There's nobody around you. You've started feeling funny. Your first thought has never been to go to the hospital. Now you start realizing that this is getting serious and it's painful. What are some of the home remedies that you can use to salvage the situation before even maybe you're taken to the hospital?
Okay, so if I'm in pain, let's say abdominal pain and all that, usually para is not the go-to when it comes to abdominal pain because it doesn't work much. But then if you're in pain, yeah, maybe some of them will give you headache, fever, and all that. You can take your regular paracetamol. If, let's say, you are having a bit of diarrhea, then coconut water, and then maybe ORS, okay, because they have the electrolytes that you are also losing. But when you are vomiting, you can't take in anything. So when you are vomiting, straight to the hospital because you can't take in anything. Okay, but when you have diarrhea, you can start with some coconut water, some ORS, and then our popular Imodium. It reduces the frequency of the diarrhea. Okay, so then you can start with your start dose, and then you move to the hospital. I mean, the ones that you have to really rush early is the vomiting, because that one you can't do anything, because the medicine that you have, you can't even take. So I wouldn't want to say more than that. But then these are the only ones I would want to recommend. Not for you to stay home and take all of them, but for you to start it and go to the hospital for further health care. Okay, so those are the only ones I would give. So your coconut water, your ORS, if there is pain or fever or anything, you can do paracetamol, and then your Imodium to reduce the frequency of the diarrhea. Then you go to the nearest healthcare facility, and then you get checked and get treated.
Okay, so if you find out that it's poisoning or it's food poisoning that you have, and you're taking all these medications, now what happened in the system in terms of clearing out whatever poison or food that has been poisoned that you've eaten? Is it the taking of the ORS that will make you run so that the whatever poison comes out, or whatever medication you do? What does it do to the system in terms of clearing whatever it is in you?
So usually it's an infection. Okay.
Okay.
For viral infections, for instance, antibiotics won't do anything about it. It's usually your immune system. What you need is support. So you have to stop the diarrhea. So the Imodium and thing, they just stop it, reduce the frequency. They are not clearing the infection.
Okay.
They are just stopping it. Okay. We give medication to stop vomiting. So you stop the process of the vomiting, and then you replace the losses. Like I said, so if you've lost lots of water, we replace it. If you've lost electrolytes, we replace it. And then if it's viruses, we won't give you any antibiotics. Whilst we do that, the body will now get the chance to regenerate itself and clear the virus out of your system. Because if we don't support you, now the body will go into deficit, and that deficit will cause complications, and then you can die. But then if we stop the body from going into such a deficit, and then we replace the water, replace the electrolyte, we stop the vomiting and the diarrhea, then the body itself will now get rid of the virus, and then you'll be fine. But if it is bacterial, then we have to treat. That one, antibiotics are required. So then we'll add antibiotics to that therapy, and then it will help get rid of it. So the bacteria will be cleared by the antibiotics, whilst we support you with the fluids and then the other things that you need. If it is, let's say, a parasite, we have other medications for the parasite. That one too we have to treat. Okay, so based on how you present and then the labs that we do, then we'll know how we are going to manage you. But then largely, we have to make sure we control the vomiting and the diarrhea, and then the pain or discomfort you are going through, so that you don't lose so much water, so much electrolyte, so that your kidneys are not affected and all that. So that's what's very important to us. Then we treat the underlying infection. Then usually it doesn't take a lot of time, because we can just stop all that very quickly. We put you on the medication. The moment the diarrhea and things stop, you can switch the medications from IVs to orals, and then you can go home and continue your recovery.
Is there a period of time where it would take for someone to die from food poisoning? Like maybe it would take you 3 days, 3 hours, 4 days to die out of that?
It depends on how severe it is. So as I said, it varies. So if you are losing so much, it depends on how immunocompetent you are. So if you become hypovolemic, then maybe your kidneys are shutting down, you're going into shock. That one, it can kill you very quickly. If it's electrolyte imbalance, then the electrolyte that you've lost, it should be so severe. It depends on the severity. So if it's so severe and then nobody is like helping you get out of it, and let's say your potassium levels are dropping, that one is affecting your heart. Sodium levels are dropping, it's affecting your brain. So it depends on exactly the kind of complication you are developing. Okay, so that's how we determine what will kill you. Okay, and then based on the intervention, how quickly you get intervention so you can recover.
Mrs. Latte, we have a lot of shops, like you mentioned, plenty of them. You can't always be everywhere, but yet we have certain places where they are not taking the safety of people into consideration. People bring things there on the shelves. It takes a long time, and they're still there. Some have expiry dates, and they're still selling them, and all of these. What are we doing about those things as well?
Yes, so we have a very vibrant market surveillance team that goes out every day. There are many, and they go out every day. But as you mentioned, our eyes can't be everywhere. So we also rely on consumers.
Okay.
Yes, because we should also always have our money's worth when we are buying things. We always advise when you are buying things, at least look at the expiry dates and the conditions under which the product is being kept. So if you went to a shop, you picked some products, you realize that some are expired, you quickly inform us. We have a complaint desk. So you inform us. Your identity, of course, wouldn't be in the open. No. So you inform us. We quickly go to the shop and then follow up. If they are selling expired products, we sanction them. We pull all of them out of the shelves. Yes, so that is.
But are you getting that support from the consumers?
Oh yes, yes. We have a number of consumers reporting on daily basis. You may not have to come over. We have our hotlines. You call us and we will still follow up. Once you call us, we pick your number, we follow up, and then we give you a feedback. And then we also have competitors also coming to also complain.
Oh.
Yes. Oh yes. We have.
They come and choke the others.
Yeah, so that also helps us. that also helps us. That times people have team up, they are in a business, the business goes bad, and then we have one person coming to complain, and then we go and we'll be able to catch. So all that help, yeah.
Well, what's the major challenge that you face apart from the fact that you can't be everywhere? I'm sure there are. You mentioned of surveillance and all of that. You know, beyond all that, are there major challenges that you're facing that is not making the work easy for you?
Well, the challenge is just resources. Of course, human resources. If we could be everywhere, that means we'll be many. Yes, so human resources and of course logistics like transports. But when we receive complaints and we don't even have any official vehicle at hand, we get into a taxi, Uber, and then go and do the work. Yes, so we overstretch ourselves when we receive complaints, and because we are dealing with lives. If it has to do with food or drugs or the other products we regulate, they cannot kill.
Yeah.
So we don't joke when it comes to some of these things. Yeah.
Okay, Doc, can someone have food poisoning and not experience any symptoms at all? Is it possible?
Yeah, it is. I'm sure more than 53 people took the food, but we had only 53 people, down with the disease. So as I said earlier on, it depends on how immunocompetent you are in your system. Some people have been exposed to it over and over again. They have all tons of antibodies, so they easily handle these things very easily. So yes, it's possible.
Now let's look at another thing. I read, based on this conversation, something about hepatitis and the fact that there's the tendency of a certain hepatitis, infecting people. If maybe, for example, whoever that is selling the food has it, and in preparation, the person coughs or anything that makes anything comes out of the person and enters the food, it's possible that that can also poison, individuals who will eat it. I think hepatitis A or something like that. Okay,
so I talked about viruses causing some of the food poisoning and all that. So when it comes to hepatitis, we have different kinds of hepatitis, the viral hepatitis. So we have the hepatitis A, B, C, D, E, okay? But then the one that causes food poisoning is A and E.
A and E?
Yes, they cause food poisoning. So usually they are caused by ingesting water, food or water that is contaminated, like what we said earlier on, contaminated with hepatitis A or hepatitis E. Something about with the hepatitis A particularly, close contact can also cause infection. But with the hepatitis E, it is solely contaminated food or water. But then hepatitis A is both contaminated food and water and close contact with the infected person. Okay, so that's it. Not the B, not the C, not the D. Okay, so then there's the BD, like we already know, sex, close contact, human, body fluids and all that. But when it comes to A and E, contaminated water. So water that is contaminated with hepatitis A or E, or food that is contaminated with it, can make you get it. And also present the same way. You can have diarrhea, and this abdominal pain, body pain and all that. But the difference is when we say hepatitis, the word hepatitis means inflammation of the liver. So then hepatitis, their main thing is they affect the liver. They cause the liver to get inflamed. So the thing is, aside getting your diarrhea and all that is going to hit your liver. So that's why it's hepatitis virus. So you will get the whole diarrheal thing, but at the end of the day, it's your liver that's going to get hit. Okay, so that's the difference.
That also kills. It gets to the point where if
So hepatitis A hardly kills. Most of the time, you can get your hepatitis. You can, some few occasions, you get fulminant hepatitis. That is very bad, acute, inflammation of the liver. But we hardly record death. I mean, according to statistics, hardly. It's not like it doesn't happen, but it's not very common.
Okay. Mrs. Latte,
before you come in,
sure.
The food vendors or anybody who sells food or manufactures food is supposed to be screened.
Okay.
Yes. So they usually go to the health facilities and the assemblies coordinate that. And they are screened for these communicable diseases, like the hepatitis A.
Is this something that is happening?
It's something
it's there, but it's not.
Oh,
it's not happening.
It is happening. The assemblies do very well with that.
Okay.
And before we issue a license to a facility, all the workers in there are supposed to be screened.
Really?
Yes. So they have the cards. The association gives them cards. Yes. After they had been screened. Yes. So they are screened for the hepatitis A, other communicable diseases like typhoid, TB, cholera, and all that before we issue them with license. Yes. So it's something which is, of course, it's supposed to be done every 6 months or so.
Yeah, that is not happening.
Yes, in some cases. In most cases, they do. But in some cases, of course, it expires and they wouldn't redo it. But it's something.
But how do we enforce that? So we make sure that
they have the cards. So when we go around for our inspections, we check.
So in the case of Yellow CC, you check the other workers as well?
Yellow CC, she herself had it. But there were two others who didn't have. Yes, but she herself had it.
Okay. All right. Doc, we're going to be wrapping up with you, and then we'll also take a look at another thing. Nitrous gas conversation is also coming up. We're going to be looking at that as well. It's something that it's prevailing, and we want to get a bit of understanding on that as well, so we can see how best we get ourselves out of that situation as well. But before you go, it's something that is inevitable. Once something is contaminated, obviously anybody that is going to be eating it would be at risk and die at risk, because it could actually end your life as well. What would you want to tell people who feel it's okay for them to buy from anywhere? Because sometimes when you hear some of the things people say about food and where they buy them, health does not come into play at all. You understand? So it looks as though now it's common. It's okay for you to buy anywhere you want to buy. Some even believe that those that are near to the gutters that are even, delicious. Is there a point where we have to now understand that this is putting your life at risk?
So as we've all seen, we have evidence of 53 people getting food poisoning and somebody dying out of it. Not too long ago, we had a similar case.
Yeah. Even in Cape Coast, we've had a situation like that as well.
So we need to know that it can affect any one of us. Provided you buy from outside or you cook and then you don't handle your food properly or you don't store it properly, can happen.
So it's not even just buying out from outside.
Not
even in
at
your
all.
own home,
Yes.
you can be food poisoned.
Because if you leave your stew overnight, like Yellow CC did, and then you eat it the following day, then you can get food poisoning. So it can happen to any one of us. So we should be alert, be cautious of where we buy our food, try and look out for what she was talking about, the registration. Make sure they are all registered. How they handle the food is also very important. You see, whilst we are buying, we should observe how they do things, how they coordinate and they do things, the environment where they are. And we ourselves should make sure that we eat food that is warm, if we can warm the food even after buying it, that's okay, so that you can eliminate all doubts of any form of contamination. And when we are home, let's make sure we store our food properly and warm our foods as well. That's what I would say.
All right. Thank you very much, Doc, for joining us. Mrs. Latte will be here for us to get into another conversation that has to do with nitrous oxide. But Dr. Josephine Awotwe-Kweku is a medical doctor. She joined us over here to help us understand what exactly food poisoning is all about, and also what we can do to ensure that we are not getting ourselves in that situation. I mean, we all know about what has happened, and we do not want that to happen again. So moving forward, let's try as much as possible to take care of ourselves and stay out of that. Doc, thank you so much for coming and helping us understand this better. Now, there's a public caution that we want to treat. The attention of the Food and Drugs Authority has been drawn to the abuse, misuse of nitrous oxide gas at nightclubs and parties in the forms of balloons and also canisters. That's to induce euphoria and laughter. Now, nitrous oxide gas is used as a propellant and a preservative in the food industry and a medical anesthetic, analgesic. And so this is something that has a lot of things that you and I will not understand, but we've got experts that will break it down for us to understand what exactly has been going on with this. We take that conversation right after this. Stay with us.